83 cents. That's what one of the smartest blood sugar foods in the grocery store costs per serving. Not a supplement, not a powder, not something hidden in a health food aisle, just a plain fruit most people walk past without thinking. And here's the part that gets missed. The fruit itself is only half the story. Because with diabetes, it's not just what fruit you eat. It's how ripe it is, what you eat it with, how much of it you eat, and whether you're chewing it or drinking it. Get that wrong, and a fruit that looks harmless can send your numbers climbing. Get it right, and a cheap bowl from the produce section can work with your body instead of against it. Now here's what makes this more frustrating than it should be. Walk into almost any kitchen in America, and you'll find 7 common fruits sitting there right now. 3 of them can fit beautifully into a blood sugar-friendly routine. 4 of them, can quietly make the whole day harder, especially first thing in the morning or late at night, when people think fruit is always the safe choice. And nobody really explains the difference in a simple way. You just hear, eat healthy, which sounds helpful until you realize a banana, a grapefruit, and a box of raisins do not behave the same way once they hit your system. If you want simple, science-backed blood sugar help after 60, subscribe now because I explain what rushed appointments never do. And while you're here, leave me one word in the comments the fruit you eat most often. Just the name, apple, banana, grapes, whatever it is. I read those, and they tell me exactly what real people are struggling with in actual kitchens, not textbook kitchens. So today I'm going to rank 7 common fruits from the ones that deserve a little caution to the 3 I'd put at the top of the list for steadier blood sugar. And the number 1 fruit is probably not the one most people expect, because the benefit isn't just in the fruit itself. It's in what that fruit does to insulin sensitivity over time. Before we rank anything, let me make fruit less confusing. Fruit gets talked about like it's one giant category, like every fruit is automatically good or automatically bad. It doesn't work that way. Fruit is more like a spectrum. Some fruits come with more fiber, more water, more chewing, and a slower release of sugar. Others come in a more concentrated form, or they're so easy to overeat that you can take in far more carbohydrate than you meant to without feeling like you ate very much. That difference matters. Because sugar doesn't act alone. Fiber changes the speed. Portion changes the load. Ripeness changes the effect. And whether you drink it or chew it changes almost everything. When you eat whole fruit, your body has to do some work. You chew it, your stomach handles it more slowly. The fiber helps delay how quickly sugar moves into the bloodstream. That doesn't make fruit free. And it doesn't mean you can eat unlimited amounts. But it does mean whole fruit behaves very differently from fruit juice, sweetened dried fruit, canned fruit in syrup, or a huge serving of a very ripe fruit on an empty stomach. That's why 2 people can both say, I ate fruit for breakfast. And one stays steady while the other is hungry, tired, and looking at a much higher reading before lunch. So let's start with number 7. The fruit I'd be the most careful with is raisins. Not because grapes are evil. They're not. The problem is concentration. A small box of raisins looks tiny, almost innocent, and that's exactly why people get fooled by it. When grapes lose their water, what's left is a much denser package of sugar. The serving size shrinks dramatically, but people rarely eat a true small portion. They grab a box, toss a handful onto cereal, snack straight from the container, and suddenly they've eaten way more carbohydrate than they would have if they had simply eaten whole grapes. Raisins are the kind of fruit that can fit in a plan, but only in very measured amounts. Number 6 is watermelon, and this one surprises people because it feels so light. It's mostly water, it tastes refreshing, and in summer it almost feels like you're eating a health food by default. But the reason watermelon can be tricky is that it goes down incredibly easily. A person doesn't stop at a few cubes, they eat a plateful, then another few bites standing at the counter, then maybe the leftovers while cleaning up. The total adds up fast. So while a modest portion can absolutely fit, watermelon becomes a problem when it turns into a giant bowl by itself, especially as a standalone snack with no protein, no fat, and nothing to slow the ride. Number 5 is the very ripe banana. And I want to be careful here, because bananas are not the villain internet nutrition culture makes them out to be. A banana is not one fixed thing. A firmer, less ripe banana behaves differently from a soft, spotty one. As a banana ripens, some of the starch shifts and the fruit tastes sweeter, which is exactly why people love it. But That same sweetness is also why overripe bananas are easier to absorb quickly, especially if you eat the whole thing by itself first thing in the morning. Half of a banana with eggs, Greek yogurt, or peanut butter is very different from one soft banana eaten alone while running out the door. Number 4 is pineapple. Pineapple has real nutritional value, and I never want to turn a food discussion into fear. But if we're talking strictly about blood sugar stability, pineapple is one of those fruits that can feel healthier than the effect it actually gives you. It's sweet, soft, and easy to eat quickly. People don't nibble pineapple. They eat bowlfuls, or they drink it, or they buy it packed in syrup and assume fruit is fruit. That's where the trouble starts. A few chunks after a balanced meal is one thing. A large serving on its own, especially from a cup, can hit much faster than people realize and leave them looking for another snack not long after. So those are the 4 I'd keep an eye on: raisins, watermelon, very ripe bananas, and pineapple. None of them need to be banned. That's not the point. The point is that if your blood sugar has been confusing you, these are the fruits I'd move mentally from safe anytime to portion matters, timing matters. And now we get to the 3 I'd build around more confidently, the fruits that give you a better combination of fiber, satisfaction, and steadier follow-through. If you're keeping score in your own kitchen, this is the moment where the fruit bowl starts to look very different. Number 3 is the apple. And honestly, apples do not get enough credit because they're too ordinary. They're not exotic, they're not trendy, and nobody is making a $130 supplement out of them. But a whole apple, especially with the skin on, is one of the simplest blood sugar-friendly snacks you can keep around. It slows you down, you have to chew it, it comes with fiber. It's portable. And it's much harder to accidentally overdose than something like dried fruit or juice. Apples also tend to satisfy that desire for something sweet without turning into dessert disguised as produce. That matters more than people think, because the best fruit is the one that helps you stay out of the pantry an hour later. Now here's where people accidentally ruin the apple advantage. They peel it. They turn it into applesauce. They drink it as juice. Or they eat it alongside a pastry and then assume the apple didn't work. But the form matters. A whole apple with its skin is doing a different job than apple juice, even if both started in the same orchard. One asks your body to digest and absorb gradually. The other gets absorbed much faster and usually without the fullness that comes from actually chewing. If you want the apple to help, keep it whole, keep the skin on, and pair it with something that makes the snack feel complete, like nuts, cheese, or peanut butter. Number 2 is grapefruit. On paper, grapefruit is excellent for blood sugar-conscious eating. It's relatively low in carbohydrates per serving, it's tart enough that people rarely binge it, and the whole fruit has fiber when you eat the segments rather than drinking the juice. It also tends to feel refreshing instead of heavy, which makes it useful at breakfast or alongside a protein-rich meal. And for a lot of people, grapefruit has another quiet advantage. It doesn't trigger that "I need more" effect the way very sweet fruits sometimes do. It finishes clean. You eat it, you enjoy it, and you move on. That is incredibly helpful for people who are tired of thinking about food all morning. But grapefruit comes with one warning I would never skip, because this is not a tiny detail. Grapefruit can interact with certain medications. Not all of them, but enough of them that you should never assume are fine just because grapefruit is natural. Natural does not mean neutral. If you take medications for cholesterol, blood pressure, heart rhythm, anxiety, allergies, or certain other conditions, grapefruit may change how that medicine is handled in the body. So if grapefruit is on your list and you take prescription medication, take the extra minute and ask your pharmacist. That one question matters more than any fruit ranking on the internet. A good fruit choice is never worth creating a medication problem. And now number 1. The fruit I would put at the top for many people trying to steady blood sugar is the blueberry. Not because it's magic, not because you can pour it over pancakes and call breakfast healthy, but because blueberries bring a combination people with diabetes actually need: manageable portions, fiber, strong flavor, and compounds that have been studied for their relationship to insulin sensitivity. They also tend to be easier to keep consistent. Fresh works. Frozen works. They don't require peeling, slicing, or a recipe. And that simplicity is powerful. The best habits are not the most exciting ones. They're the ones you can repeat on a Tuesday when you're tired, distracted, and not in the mood to measure anything complicated. Here's the mistake people make with blueberries. They take one of the most useful fruits in the store and bury it under sugar. Blueberry muffins, blueberry bagels, blueberries in sweetened cereal, blueberry smoothies that are really a dessert with fruit blended into it. Then they say, I tried blueberries and my sugar still went up. Well, of course it did. The blueberry wasn't the issue. Everything wrapped around it was the issue. If you want the benefit, keep it boring in the best possible way to half cup to 3/4 of a cup, whole, paired with plain Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, or a handful of nuts. That's where blueberries start acting like a useful food instead of a marketing word. And there's another reason blueberries keep winning in real life. They make consistency easy. I heard from a viewer named Elaine, 67 years old, who told me the number she hated most wasn't even her fasting reading. It was the late morning number. That one reading around 10:30 or 1100 when breakfast had already worn off and she was either shaky, ravenous, or annoyed because her meter never seemed to make sense. What changed for her wasn't some giant life overhaul. She stopped having toast and juice as her automatic breakfast, and a few mornings a week she switched to plain yogurt with blueberries and walnuts. Her words were simple. I stopped chasing my hunger all morning. That is such an important phrase because that's what blood sugar-friendly eating is really trying to solve. Not just the number on the meter, but the whole chain reaction that comes after it. The crash, the second snack, the frustration, the feeling that you're doing your best and still ending up hungry. Blueberries help because they often fit into a breakfast or snack that actually holds. Apples help because they travel well and force slower eating. Grapefruit helps because it's refreshing and not overly sweet, if your medications allow it. Notice the pattern here. The best fruits are not just the ones with a nice nutrition label. They're the ones that make the next decision easier too. So if you want a practical plan, here it is. Tonight, take a look at the fruit in your kitchen. If you have raisins, very ripe bananas, pineapple cups, or a huge watermelon sitting there, don't panic. Just change the role those foods play. Smaller portions, better timing, preferably after a balanced meal, not alone on an empty stomach. Then make the easier choices more visible. Put apples where you can see them. Keep frozen blueberries in the freezer. If grapefruit works with your medication list, keep 1 or 2 around for breakfast. Design beats willpower almost every time. What you reach for first matters more than what you promised yourself in theory. Second, stop treating fruit juice like it's interchangeable with fruit. It isn't. This is where a lot of good intentions go sideways. Someone swaps soda for orange juice and assumes they've made a blood sugar-friendly decision just because the drink sounds healthier. But juice removes most of what makes fruit helpful in the first place: the fiber, the chewing, the built-in speed limit. If your glucose has been harder to manage than it should be, one of the simplest experiments you can run is replacing the daily juice with whole fruit for 2 weeks and seeing what happens. Not because whole fruit is perfect, but because it usually gives your body a much fairer deal. Third, pay attention to pairing. Fruit by itself is not automatically wrong, but many people do better when fruit is not working alone. An apple with peanut butter, blueberries with Greek yogurt, grapefruit with eggs or cottage cheese. Even half a firmer banana with a few nuts is different from a banana eaten solo in the car. The goal is not to build a complicated food system. The goal is to slow things down just enough that your breakfast or snack doesn't become an invitation to overeat 90 minutes later. And that's the part most people miss. Better blood sugar often starts with better follow-through, not with stricter rules. So let's simplify the whole video into one sentence. If you're living with diabetes and you want fruit to work for you, think whole, think measured, think paired, and think repeatable. That's why my top 3 are apples, grapefruit, and blueberries. Apples because they are steady and practical. Grapefruit because it's sharp, satisfying, and blood sugar friendly for the right person. Blueberries because they're easy to use consistently and they bring more to the table than sweetness alone. That's the list I'd trust in an ordinary kitchen with ordinary people trying to make better mornings one decision at a time. And if there's one thing I want you to remember after this video ends, it's this: the fruit itself is only part of the story. The bigger question is whether that fruit helps you feel stable, satisfied, and less reactive afterward. If it does, keep it close. If it leaves you hungry, foggy, or reaching for more carbs an hour later, change the portion, the pairing, or the timing. That's how you make nutrition practical instead of theoretical. And in the next video, I want to show you the 3 breakfast drinks that quietly push fasting blood sugar higher and the 2 swaps that usually calm it down. One of them may already be in your refrigerator.